we know that suicide can be a very difficult topic for families to talk about.
According to the most recent figures from the Minnesota Department of Health, suicide is the second leading cause of death in young people in Minnesota between the ages of 10 and 24 years old. So here to talk more about suicide prevention is Dr. Joel Spalding. He is the medical director of psychiatry at Children's Minnesota. Dr. Spalding, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Doctor, in the story we just heard Nora talk about, all the what ifs. What didn't ICE catch? What didn't he tell us? What was he hiding? Maybe to protect us even. I imagine a lot of parents would think about that. What are the signs, though, that a child might be thinking or might be showing to you that suicide is something that they're thinking about?
Yeah, there's signs and then there's timing, I think. So if there's anything that's a transition, a stress, the start of the school year, the end of the school year, loss of friendships, those are times to be more attentive. And I think as far as signs that you'll see a change in the child's normal functioning. If they're normally a good student and their grades start to plummet and they're having a difficult time paying attention, it may be because they're preoccupied, and that's a time to check in. Change in energy, change in sleep. Are also big indicators that children are struggling, and it's worth checking in with them at that point to see how they're doing.
You know, at the beginning of the pandemic, there was great concern that the isolation would have negative effects, especially when it comes to suicide with young people and teenagers. The data I've seen hasn't borne that out. Perhaps we were taking care of each other more intentionally at the beginning of COVID. But now that this has been going on for a while, what sort of impact are you seeing as far as on that age group specifically?
Yeah, it was interesting. I think a lot of us would have predicted that there would be more difficulty going into the pandemic with the changes there. I think it removed some stress for some kids as far as having to deal with school, doing that online instead. The demands weren't as great. But I think there is already increased stress as we come out of the pandemic as well. And I think hopefully we don't see a big increase in these struggles and with suicide and depression, but that's what I'm concerned about. So I think there's that going into the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic and stress associated with both of those that I think kids are indicating that they're experiencing.
We know in many cases it's already hard sometimes for parents and teenagers to talk and to communicate as well. What can parents do that they would actually help the situation and you know, maybe unwillingly not make it worse?
Yeah, I think those points in time where you know they're stressed, I think those are good times to talk. I think that the other thing is I will stress that even in between time, you establish a pattern where you're checking in with your child about how they're feeling, what their stress level is, so that when the time is that they really need that they know they can go to you for that. And then part of that, I think, is the parent being honest about, yes, they experience stress too, and talk about how they get through it, and so that they know that the child sees their parent as a resource that can handle things and they can come to, and it's not going to overwhelm them.
Tell us about the new program that Children's Minnesota just opened to help teens who are struggling.
Yeah, Children's, recently we went through an assessment of what we had as far as mental health spectrum of care and what the community needed. And we have started an intensive outpatient program, a partial hospitalization program in Lakeville, in the southern Twin Cities, as that was an area of need geographically, and that level of intensity of care. It also seems to be a significant need for the community, and within Children's we have had identified a significant need for that as well.
Good to hear, good to hear. All right, Dr. Joel Spalding, Medical Director of Psychiatry at Children's Minnesota, thank you.
Thank you.
If you or somebody you know needs help, you can call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. That number is 800-273-TALK. That's 800-273-8255.